All right, we'll go ahead and kick off this meeting now. Welcome to the 2021 annual landowner meeting for Penn 1. As I mentioned just prior to the start, looks like with the landowners present, we have over 500 acres represented. And that is, we have 600 acres present, which is over half of 852 acres. So we're good to go. So let's see, next slide. So I believe you guys are all familiar with Zoom and how it works, since we do this all the time together. But just so you know, we're going to run through some staff presentations, and you can feel free to ask questions via the chat or raise your hand sort of as normal. I'll walk through at the start of this meeting with sort of our official business, which will include the approval of the minutes that you should have received in your packet yesterday and your board elections. We'll walk through some presentations. Since a lot of these topics are things that you're familiar with, we can adjust the level of detail that you'd like. Sort of feel free to ask questions. Otherwise, we'll kind of be giving a high level overview. As part of the requirements for our landowner meeting, we need to give an update on the district financials and then also sort of just the operations of the district. So we'll be covering those and then sprinkling in some other fun stuff as well. So please feel free to ask questions if there's anything else you'd like to cover. We'll have time at the end for new business, and I think we should be done well before 1:30. So as I said, you can feel free to use the chat. We'll be saving that for the public record. You can also raise your hand. Either way works for us. So I've already indicated that we do have quorum right now, so this meeting is official and we are called to order. And the first order of official business is approval of the 2019 meeting minutes. 2019 was the last time that Penn 1 held an official landowner meeting, and so you should have received those minutes for your review yesterday afternoon. And so if you have any questions or feedback, I could take that now. Otherwise, I could take a motion from anyone to approve those minutes. Any landowners out there feel like making a motion for approval?
So I have not had a chance, this is Claudia, I have not had a chance to review them. If you give me like 2 minutes, I'm sure I could give them a quick once over and be comfortable making a motion, if that's okay.
Sure, we could come back to this if you'd like. That's not a problem for me. We're flexible here, at least for today.
All right, that'd be great.
So the next order of official business is the election of the Board of Supervisors. And so just as a refresher and a reminder, the seats on the Penn 1 board are for terms of 3 years. If we ever don't have quorum or for some reason miss a year of being able to hold the election, we have to hold the election the subsequent year. And so that's why this year there's going to be 2 different elections. It's essentially one for the term ending in 2023 and one for the term ending in 2024. And so currently those are for the seats held by PJ representing the port, Jeff representing Harsh Investments, and then Claudio representing City of Portland. And so how this will work is I'll just open, I'll start with the first election, which is those 2 seats with the term ending in 2023. I'll open the floor for nominations. Any landowner can nominate themselves or another eligible landowner. I'll close nominations for that, and then I'll open nominations for the seat with the end date in 2024. We'll do the same process, and I'll close them. Depending if you all would like to vote by ballot, we have a link and you can do it so that way. Otherwise, we can do a voice vote if you all are comfortable. We can wait and see how the nominations roll in first before you make that decision. So I know that is certainly confusing, especially via Zoom, but does anyone have any questions off the top for how this will work?
Sorry, Emily, if I missed this. I don't want to assume, but I do assume that PJ Christopher and Jeff Noodleman are interested in continuing their service on the board. If they're not here, can we still nominate and elect them, which seems like a great thing to do?
Yes, you can nominate them even if they are not present. I indicated to Jeff via email that his seat would be up. I didn't hear specifically from him that he was interested. Similarly with PJ, I would assume he's still interested since he's been on the board a shorter term and remains enthusiastic, but I haven't heard from them specifically. So you're certainly entitled to nominating them in their absence. Any other questions? All right.
I noticed you didn't ask me, James, if I wanted to continue.
It's understood, right, Claudio?
All right.
You can check
So-
out anytime you like, but you can never leave. Yeah.
So, well then, so I would go ahead and, are you looking for a motion to
Yes,
nominate?
so for seats 1 and 4 there, the two PJ and Jeff's seats, I'll open the floor now for nominations for seat 1 and seat 4 with the term ending in 2023.
All right. Well, I'll nominate PJ Christopher for seat 1 for the term ending in October 2023.
Great.
Thank you, Claudio. I'll second that. If I do need to second it.
It doesn't hurt. Is there any nominations for seat number 4?
I'll nominate Jeff Noodleman for seat number 4, term ending 2023.
Great.
And this is Claudio. I'll second that.
Fantastic. Are there any other nominations for these 2 open seats? If not, I'll go ahead and close the nominations at this time and then open nominations for seat number 2, and that would be with the term ending in 2024 and with the seat that's currently held by Claudio.
So I nominate Claudio Campuzano for seat number 2, term ending October 2024.
And I realize right this moment that this is going to be a term ending in July 2023. This is like a copy error from like a different landowner meeting. So your meeting's always held in July, and so it will be July 2023 for all of these seats. So Kirsten, if you can make sure that the record reflects that accurately, that would be great.
Thanks.
Oops. Sorry, Janet, I didn't mean to give you away. All right, so we can go ahead and hold a vote on this since there's only this 3 people nominated, which is the same number of seats. If you all are comfortable, we can just hold a voice vote to approve the slate of nominated candidates. Then that would be fine. If you prefer to do it in secret, we can do that too. Otherwise, I would take a motion to approve the nominated candidates for the 3 board seats.
I motion to approve the nominated candidates for the 3 approved board seats.
And I'll second that.
Cool, perfect. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the 3 nominees for the 3 board seats, please say aye.
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 Great, thank you. Well, congratulations, Claudio. And we'll have to let PJ know when he gets here that how lucky he got today. And I'll make sure Jeff's included in that. Congratulations as well. We can go ahead and move into the staff presentations, and then I'll circle back on the minutes when we finish those. So Janet, I believe you're up first.
Hi. Okay, so for the financial update, the most recent audit that's been completed is the 2019-2020. It's a review. And the audited financial report was done by James Marta again, which he's been our auditor for the last 5 years, using the accrual method in accordance with all the GAAP standards. The district received a clean financial audit free of any material misstatements, which is great. And I guess if you'd like to obtain a copy, you're welcome to go out to our website. I believe it's posted out there on our document library, or you can always contact me and I'll be happy to send you a copy. So that's about it. All is good. And we're starting the next audit year this coming month.
Thank you, Janet. Are there any questions on the financial update? Otherwise, Kelly put together some presentation regarding the boundary process that you all went through earlier this year.
Yeah, for several years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess upon reflection, my presentation is probably a little too detailed for this group. I just, in my mind, was like, landowners, they want to know how this works. But I've gone through this process with you several times, but I guess it never hurts to kind of go through it one more time in case you all get questions and that you need to answer about the changes that were made. So what the statute requires is not entirely clear. So we had to kind of forge a process that we would follow that was kind of the most conservative pathway to get this done. So where there were multiple potential statutes that applied, we kind of went with the more restrictive. So if it was, maybe it's a 3-week notice, maybe it's a 4 weeks, we would go with 4 weeks just to be certain. And we made sure that we met all of the statutory requirements that we identified as potentially pertaining to this process, just to button everything up. So it really is designed more for the original district formation, back in 1917. So it doesn't fit well with kind of how the districts operate now, but we made it work. And then it involves 3 neutral commissioners that they provide a report to the court about how the district's plan for reclamation will affect the properties that are going to be incorporated. So the process that we went through was that the board voted to move forward with the boundary adjustment process, and that happened in, I don't know, 2017 or 16, a long time ago. And then we needed to get 60% of the landowners to petition the court to be annexed. And so that was 60% of the land to be incorporated. And so we ended up getting 3 major landowners petitioning, including Graphics Packaging, Harsh, and Metro. So that was enough to get us well beyond the 60% requirements. So we were able to petition the court pretty immediately there in the end of 2020. And then we had to hold a hearing to allow any objections to the petition, which there were none. So we moved forward with the commissioners meeting to put together their report. And then once the report was finalized, which was mostly developed by staff, but we got a lot of really good feedback from the commissioners, and they had really thoughtful questions and helped us to improve the report and add some things that were valuable to showing the benefit that these properties do receive from the work of the district. So then that was filed with the court, and then there was another opportunity to object to the report that was drafted by the commissioners, and there were none. And so then the court made a final order authorizing the annexation of those properties. And then we did assess those properties in the fiscal year 21-22 assessments that will either have gone out or will go out very shortly. Next slide, thanks. This is just a little overview and a reminder of the assets and the flood control system that's present in Pen 1. So this shows the pump stations, the flood walls, the stop log closures, and then the levees, which y'all are probably pretty familiar with, but it's just always a good reminder to see exactly how much that is in a small district. Next slide. This map identifies particularly the stop log closures, which, and I wish that Bill was here because I'm not an engineer, but basically those are gaps in the flood wall that we insert to close off when there's a flood to prevent water from going through that otherwise can be open for use other times in the year.
I'm here, by the way, Kelly.
Oh, Kevin. Oh, good. Yeah. So if I say anything that's totally wrong or not helpful, feel free to speak up. So here's a picture. I always think this is so fun to see how this goes together, putting in the stop logs. So these ones are going across Marine Drive. And so they put in these pylons and then slip in the concrete panels in between to basically shut off that road and prevent any flooding from coming through from the west side. So it's just a neat process, and some people have gotten to watch it. I've never gotten to see it in person, but I've always enjoyed these pictures, so I included them. Kevin, is there anything else about the stop logs or the particular infrastructure in Pen 1 that's worth noting at this point?
Not at this time. I think the PMLS has plans to potentially address the railroad closure, the one that's furthest to the west. But these closures should remain the same under the new feasibility study from the Corps. So, and these have been redone since the levee was originally designed back in the 90s. PBOT redid this closure with those posts that they have in the middle of Marine Drive and report all those panels. So it's fairly recent infrastructure.
And we do drill on this, at least once a year? Is that correct, Kevin?
They, by our agreement with PBOT, it's usually, I think, once every 2 years. And what they used to do is every year they would do either the railroad closure furthest to the west there along that western boundary, or they would do this one. And then they would usually do one of the two smaller closures along the flood wall along Marine Drive that, runs parallel to the levee. It was 2 years ago they did all of them. They just exercised them all in the same year. I'm not aware of anything that was exercised last year, probably due to COVID. So I would expect that they'd probably run those again this year or next.
Great, thank you, Kevin. And so why it's important to remind everybody what the flood control system and structure does along the northern boundary there is because those are benefits that are being received by the northern properties and that they continue to receive for decades. So just a little history of the district. It was established in 1917 to drain the floodplain and make it available for use. And since then, it has continued to protect the properties that are along that northern boundary from the system that we just talked about. And there was a time when some of those properties had built up their properties so that they were no longer, or they thought, subject to the flooding and didn't really need the services of the district. And that happened in 1933. So at that time, they changed the reclamation plan to remove those properties. And that was kind of the whole process that we went through in 2016 when we discovered that that's what had happened. Emily, if you can scroll to the next slide. And then since then, there were two major floods, the 1948 Vanport flood, which everyone is familiar with, and then the 1996 flood, which everyone is familiar with. And those two major floods, I think, kind of brought the realization that just lifting these properties up was not sufficient and that the services of Penn 1 were still needed. And additionally, anytime that we've made improvements to the system, it's done with those properties in mind and not thinking, oh yeah, but not these guys along the northern boundary. It's all working together, functioning together, and those properties are receiving benefit. Next slide. Yeah, and then the assessment of our engineering team is that without these services, that the lower lying portions of the excluded properties would be partially or completely inundated during high water events, preventing access, interrupting transportation, interrupting the economic system there. So there's obviously a lot of benefit that these properties are receiving from the services of Penn 1. And this is just a list of general benefits from the services. So we talked about the flood wall enclosure installation a little bit, levee maintenance, making sure that those function properly during a flood, the certification and accreditation programs, which you all have had many sessions on learning about how those work, mowing and herbicide treatment to make sure that the levees can be inspected, emergency flood response and flood fighting, yeah, the list goes on. So lots of good things that Penn 1 is doing that these properties are benefiting from, and the commissioners came to the same conclusion. And so that's what it said in their report, is that this is entirely good. I mean, other than having to pay an assessment, which is extremely reasonable, and that the system is not harming or causing damage to any of those properties along the north. So we're all one district again, and receiving assessments from those properties this year, which I think was going to raise, I don't know, 40 to 50,000, maybe something like that. So yeah, a nice little padding to the Penn 1 budget. Any questions?
Thank you. Kelly?
Okay, thanks.
Kevin, you're up next with some operations updates.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Severson. I manage the engineering team at MCDD. Bill is out on vacation, so I'm covering his presentation today. So these are what the accomplishments that we have in terms related to our internal drainage. Off to the left, you can see a lot of squiggly lines that represent our water flow path internally through, the culverts are identified with the orange arrows that move water around internally, and then also down to the blue area. You can see the little blue house looking dot there along the southern boundary that is our PIR pump station that pumps out into the Columbia Slough. So we are in the process of partnering with BES and redoing the drainage and water quality master plan. We have a consultant under contract, and they're proceeding with that now. So we should have an updated master plan that's usually good for at least 5 years after this year. And then next to that is another one of our ditch safety projects. For those that don't know, a few years ago, MCDD had OSHA look at all of these work sites that all of our operations crews go to, and a lot of the culverts we maintain, and just provide their assessment. And we kept an inventory of the ones that needed to be improved. And slowly but surely, we're moving along and getting these new sites designed and permitted, and they're all kind of unique. But it's another great, in our shop, MCD's crews weld these per plan themselves. So they do some great work, and now it's a much more professional and safe site for the crews to be working and raking that ditch and not have to worry about falling in. And then next to that is an internal pump station motor that was replaced up by the Vanport wetlands. So the Port of Portland paid for that motor to be replaced. So that's the new motor in the Vanport wetlands pump station. Can you go to the next slide, please? And with our levees, what we've been working on is, in the bottom left corner there, you can see people sliding what looks to be plastic barrier together. Those are actually called muscle wall. It's a design system to construct temporary closures. So we did a flood wall exercise with that last April, looking at areas where if we need to do emergency flood closures. So there was a training exercise. And then along the center there, you can see there's Marine Drive with the flood wall where it says GP Vault is graphic packaging, and then the outfalls. BES has started their project, and they have a engineering consultant. We are providing some support to them to keep things moving and provide information that we have. But they are looking at all of these outfalls that were identified back in 2016, and then also appeared on the Corps of Engineers routine inspection, or periodic inspection, and we're going to be decommissioning a lot of these outfalls so that they're no longer just broken conduits through the levee system. It's just kind of a levee performance concern. And then graphic packaging is under contract with a consultant for the outfalls that they own to fix what we have a small sinkhole along the levee where they have some aging infrastructure on a culvert that they actually use frequently and need to have in operation. So they're taking it seriously, and they're working on that. BS is working on that. So we're taking care of these outfalls that we need to. And then this is actually, if I'm honest, a generic shot of mowing that we didn't have. One of our ops team has already moved through and mowed pen 1, but this is what they provided us with, just a mowing shot. You can see their slope mower and their other tractor mower that they drag behind. They've mowed all the levees in pen 1 for this season. Next slide. Development reviews, we've updated our standards and we have kind of revised our processes, and we have more efficient fees that are based on, we're using data-driven models. So we're looking into what things are actually costing us and just revising our fees accordingly. But we dropped our tier 2 fee to a flat fee to reduce a lot of the bureaucracy and, processing of invoices and things like that. And we'll go back and revisit that every few years and just make sure that we're charging the right fees and, doing the right amount of passing development fees on to developers rather than landowners. Yeah, and then we have a construction inspection fee. So we have a fee set up now for us to go visit and make sure things are being built the way that we'd like them to be. And they're paying for that time as well, instead of just having landowners pay for that time. Move on to the next one. Slide, please. And so in this next year, what that first shot in the upper left is a picture of the PIR pump station. It pumps out. You can kind of see the discharge lines going up over the levee. We are doing a structural rehab of that. We installed the sheet piling that you can see around it as an extra support, but there's just some concern about the performance of the piles that it's on. It's pretty well past its original design life, the structure itself. So we have a consultant under contract now, and we're going to be looking at what a structural rehab design might look like and what we might be doing. Directly to the right of that small concrete structure with the leaves is actually a tow drain that was installed in the Penn 1 levee system by the Corps of Engineers. So we will be cleaning that out as part of a routine thing. We do this every 5 years. We clean and inspect these tow drains, and that's a requirement for our periodic inspections with the Corps of Engineers. And speaking of that, in the bottom left, we have just sort of a map of Penn 1, and that's just from the Corps of Engineers periodic inspections, and then we're scheduled for another one now. The last one they completed around in 2017, release report 2018, and they're done every approximately 5 years. So we're expecting another periodic inspection, which is where they'll be looking for the follow-up on the outfall slide that we showed, that we are actively addressing these issues with our levee, because those were actual enrollment in the RIP, in the routine inspection program items that they were threatening us in a polite way, I should say, but they were letting us know that they could kick us out of the RIP if we don't fix these things. So it's nice to see that we're making that movement. And then there in the bottom right, you can see our crew lead, Byron Zirkle, standing where we will be constructing another one of those ditch safety sites, such that, we have something better than just those pieces of wood inserted upright. We'll have an actual walkway down with a platform and appropriate tie-off so people can clean and maintain that culvert. That's just off around the track of PIR. Are there any questions?
James?
Thank you, Kevin. Great presentation, comment, and a couple of questions. First comment is just thank you for the work that this team does. We spend a lot of time talking about longer term plans related to the levee modernization effort and the consolidation of the new district. But every day you folks are out there doing work, doing the work, the preventative work to keep bad things from happening. And so just big kudos to you and your team. I did have a question or two about the outfall decommissioning work. Is that a couple questions? One, is that work, are there a lot of outfall decommissioning efforts in other districts? That's one question. The second is, I think I heard from you that's under the RIP and not under the levee modernization work with the Corps. Is that the case?
Yeah, that is correct. We actually performed our own investigation where we were looking at the condition of Penn 1 for the LRC paid for an inspection of all of the outfalls along Penn 1. That information was shared with the Corps when they did the RIP inspection back in 2017. From the results of that, there was 3 outfalls in particular that were RIP eligibility tied, where they said, you need to fix these or we can potentially kick you out of the RIP.
Mm-hmm.
And so then at that point, we started trying to find ownership, find people to take ownership of these outfalls, because most of them, the vast majority of them, are not ours, or in some of it's been even lost to history on who they belong to. BES accepted a lot of the ownership of them. And so it is not tied to the Corps of Engineers feasibility study to address those. You're correct. But yeah, right now that is going forward. BES has accepted ownership, and they have they're working with Akana and I just toured the sites with them the other day and helped them find the outfalls and fill in any gaps they needed. And so they're moving along that and figuring out how they're going to decommission the outfalls we need to get sealed off.
Great, thank you. This is just a note, I think, for other board members, as we talk about assets and liabilities and just generally the investments in the district, just be mindful that there are things that maybe aren't going to be credited to the PMLS, but also do represent kind of an investment in the system that protects all the landowners in the district.
Yeah, I will say that we're paying for a little bit of administrative support for that project for the decommissioning, but most of that the vast majority of that is being paid directly by BES, and then also Graphic Packaging is paying for their own stuff. So we're just helping them out with the information they need and helping them get information. Eventually, these projects will become development reviews, and it'll fall under our development review fee structure to get their drawings and things processed through the Corps of Engineers and get things approved for 408. So.
Great, thank you, Kevin.
Any other questions on our operations and projects? Otherwise, Evan, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. This is Evan Mitchell, a Public Affairs and Communications Manager for MCB. We've got some pretty basic slides put together about the PMLS project, which you all have been talking about. I feel like maybe with the exception of PJ, who will become very well steeped in this stuff, you all have talked about this project quite extensively and many times over the course of the last 6 months. So if I'm happy to sort of go through the study objectives, the timeline, and the basic information that we would have provided if there were landowners here that if it wasn't board members present, or if there were more landowners here. But I also am just happy to answer questions if there are kind of general questions that you all feel like are burning, or I can do a combo of both. I want to make sure that this time is most useful for you all, or give you time back. I know people always appreciate that. And PJ, I'd be happy to provide information directly for you.
How about we just do a real quick overview of it?
Yeah.
I'm going out on the boat with everybody on the 11th, so just enough to get me so I have questions to ask and general idea what I'm looking at as it relates to this. Sorry, everybody, if you wanted the time back, but I mean, just real quick, and just so that I have something to.
Yeah. So we began many years ago seeking federal funding to help us modernize the system. And in 2018, we were able to secure a feasibility study, which is really the main vehicle to get funding from the federal government for levies. The Corps, maybe now that earmarks are back, that's another vehicle for funding, and we're definitely going to be sort of chasing down that pathway now that they've returned. But at least for the last decade, this has been the primary vehicle. And so we got this money through a special storm supplemental that was put together by Congress after the hurricanes Irma, Harvey, and Maria. And so there was this special set aside that was created for proactive projects to fund prevention. And we were part of 39 projects that were designated. So the study objectives really mirror that. That was, increasing resilience and reliability, improving the operability of the system, taking advantage of recreation opportunities if possible. And, this was not an environmental project. It was really sort of seeking to minimize and avoid whenever possible. The real focus of this funding was reducing flood damages. Emily, if you can go to the next slide. And so we're right towards the tail end of a pretty extensive core-led federal design process that went on for 3 years, and we're only about a third of the way through a 3-phase process that they go through. We've sort of gone through this, develop scoping and alternative development. Then they developed what they call their tentatively selected plan, which we put out we put it out to the public in January of 2020. And then there was sort of this period of public comment in early 2020. The Corps then took that public comment back in, reworked on everything. We were involved with them in that process, and they brought, and then in October of 2020, they brought their product back out and shared it with the public, shared it with our board, shared it with everybody. And now we're kind of working through the final review stage. And I think the next slide, if you can, well, here's the 3-phase process that I was talking about. So we're in the feasibility study phase. Then next is pre-construction engineering and design. You'll hear us throw around the term PED. That's what we're talking about. It's simply the design phase. It's the federal, has to do with the way that they funnel money. And so we'll seek authorization from Congress at the end of feasibility. And hopefully we'll get authorization in the 2022 Water Resources and Design Act, because otherwise we'll have to wait until they do another Water Resources and Design Act. But they probably, even if they don't, will be able to start to move into PED through other funding sources potentially. So we want to move into design, and then we want to get to construction. And those are kind of the subsequent phases we're trying to get to with the Corps, unless we can find a way into earmarks and sort of bypass all of this stuff. So that's kind of our overarching pathway. And then the next slide will sort of give you the next one. I think it's easier to see the map. This is really tiny. We can send this to you, all of you. I think you've seen some version of this in various forms. This is kind of what they're thinking about for Pen 1 itself, and you've seen this in many different forms, and it's changed a little bit, but not considerably since last year when you saw it initially. Pen 1, they've really all along been sort of recommending actually building a levee adjacent to the railroad embankment and building a flood wall. So up in the corner, in the northwest corner, building a flood wall to connect between the new levee along the golf course and the existing flood wall. Kevin, please feel free to jump in and offer anything that you feel like is necessary from an engineering perspective. And then all along the river, there's additional, elevating, either elevating existing flood wall or adding parts, extending flood wall that currently exists. Because one of the things that they are looking at for, especially in Pen 2, but a little bit in Pen 1, is bringing our level of protection up. So they're going from our current level of protection to 38 feet. So you'll see that in the descriptions here where, it says extend flood wall under I-5 and elevate by 1 foot. Spot fill existing levee to 38 feet. So a lot of it is making this more consistent level of protection throughout the system. It's sort of building, you'll see the yellow is sort of unifying and creating a more consistent level of protection all the way around, with the exception of the cross levee, which is, I guess I shouldn't call it the embankment underneath the I-5, which gives us a level of redundancy. The only work there is really directly under the I-5 overpass, where we have, that's actually a levee certification project, where we have essentially a gap that we need to fill in. It kind of looks like the levee ends and there's a flood wall and there's kind of a gap in between, and we need to tie those two things together. And so this project would take care of that. So I think you said, PJ, you'll be out on the 11th, which I believe Mark Wilcox will be on that tour. He is the project manager for the PMLS project and knows everything you could possibly imagine about this project. So he will be able to provide probably way more detail than you could possibly imagine. But we're all well versed in this and happy to provide lots of whatever questions you have, or others too, of course, if you need information, if you have questions, happy to talk about stuff now. Or
I think the takeaway is really high level, after some hurricanes and flooding, the Corps realized there needs to be safety measures put into place in the areas that they manage. And this is in response to that, right? And then there's a lot of work that needs to occur on it, and you got to find the money and you got to find out what it is you need to do. And in our Pen 1 area, this map's very helpful. These are the projects that we need to do to make it a safer area related to flooding.
Yeah, the only piece I would add there is that it's system wide. It's not
Right.
There's projects across the system.
All right.
Yeah. But Pen 1 and Pen 2 is where the majority of the work is.
And this doesn't have anything to do with MCDD, Pen 1, Pen 2, and SDIC all becoming one organization. That's another element, right? Other than the fact that they want to have a safe system.
Yes and no. It's all interrelated in that, we sought this study because we didn't have a mechanism to fund the improvements that were needed. And we sought the new district because we didn't have a sustainable mechanism to fund the improvements that were needed. So it's all kind of tied together.
But even without the new organization, this would have still needed to occur anyway.
Yeah, the challenge becomes, without the new entity, we have no way of paying for this because we have a 35% match that will come due.
Okay, thank you.
Also, this is Claudia. Isn't it fair to say also it's not just a funding issue, but a coordination issue around managing what is essentially a set of assets that provides it functions as a network, right? And so really coordinating better around the maintenance and planning for the assets, right?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent you're 100% correct, Claudia. We've gotten a large percentage of the way there through the management of the system through MCDB. I think the board's made a really wise choice in 1996 when you all chose to ask MCDD to start to administer the system as one system. There's still, there's still a lot of resources that go into operating 4 different districts and, four different boards with different personalities and different ways of doing things. And there's unnecessary coordination for sure that goes into that. Any other thoughts on the PMLS project? Well, we will be talking about this one a lot more in the coming months as we work through continued coordination and thinking about how we pay for the design phase, since we do not currently have since the new district is still sort of in that formation phase. So this will become something that you all are very, very familiar with. So please know that staff is always around and happy to walk through any of this stuff in more detail if you all need anything.
Thank you for your explanation.
So that's it as far as staff presentations. Before we bounce back to those minutes, is there any other questions or any other topics that you all would like to discuss or get on the record for the landowner meeting this year? James?
Not a question or topic. I just want to acknowledge all of the landowners' contributions to these projects. The city and Metro partnering on the outfall investigation, graphic packaging, working on their work, and the port doing the work on the Vanport wetland pump station. So just shout out to all of the landowners and the work we're doing in partnership with the district.
Thank you. The other thing I would mention, just as a process note, in your meeting coming up in August, I'll make sure that we have an item related to selection of officers. Just usually the meeting following the landowner meeting, we make sure that whoever's president wants to stay president and so forth. So be prepared for that campaign, James, if you would like to stay in that role. Let's see. So I'll bounce back to then the approval of those 2019 landowner meeting minutes. If you all have had a chance to look through those, I would take a motion for approval.
This is Claudio. I'll move to approve the minutes.
This is James. I'll second.
Wonderful. Any other questions, feedback? All right. All those in favor of approving those 2019 Penn 1 landowner meeting minutes, please say aye.
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 Cool. Are there any opposed? Thank you very much. And so that's it. That's all we've got on our agenda for today. Unless there's anything else, we can adjourn and I'll see you all. Hopefully you have seen I adjusted that date for the August Penn 1 meeting to Monday the 23rd. So I'll just plan to see you all then.
Thank you all very much for your service. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you guys all for all the great work. Really appreciate it.
Bye.